So, welcome to the webinar, and we would like to start with this, in this occasion, with the presentation of the ISO standard 59014 and experiences around the world. If that is fine with the recording, with the cameras and everything else, let me kick off the meeting. So welcome again on behalf of the World Resources Forum, and we are very happy to count today on a very nice, on the participation of experts and practitioners of the 59014 standard. This is a very nice occasion to promote, to disseminate this work, especially on a standard that was recently published. And with this, before giving them the floor and giving you also the opportunities, giving the opportunities to the audience to raise your questions, I would like to introduce the standard in few slides. And first, a very rough introduction, a very general introduction, a short one, on where we are coming from, what our motivation was to develop this standard. Then I will briefly go into the structure and requirements that are contained in this standard. One element that was very important and we believe it's giving us one opportunity to implement, to have an impact, to implement important changes in our processes is the recovery pathway that will be explained. And lastly, the 5 pilots that then will be showcased based on the 2 companies that are participating today, and also the experience of the chair of the TC 207SC5 subcommittee, representing also a company, BASF. The 2 companies that will join us today presenting the cases of implementation are CICLO from Peru, that relates to the building sector, building materials that have been recycled, and EcoWork that covers dismantling of waste. And with this, I continue with the presentation. So, where we are coming from, what is our motivation? Well, this standard was developed under 2 technical committees, 2 ISO technical committees that joined efforts, which was a kind of unique opportunity because not usually you have this support of 2 big committees developing a standard on a common area of common interest. And this is on one side, the TC323 circular economy technical committee that last year published the first standards of the series, the 59004, that is on the framework and definitions, the 59010, that includes indicators for circularity performance, the 59020 on circularity performance, the 59010 that relates to business models, the 59040 on the product circularity data sheet, that is the last one published, and the 59014 that is the standard of today, that we will cover today. So this is the series of standards already available and complements a set under the work of the joint working group with the other standards that relate to the 59014. These standards under the TC207SC5 on environmental management, life cycle assessment, are, to give you some examples, the 59040, of course, that is the basis with the framework on how to conduct LCAs, the 14044, which provides guidelines, requirements and guidelines, and the 46 on water footprint, and the 67 on greenhouse gas emissions. This is to give you some examples on the relationships that that exist with this standard 59014. Now, the 59014 is the Environmental Management and Circular Economy Standard on Sustainability and Traceability of the Recovery of Secondary Materials. This standard provides principles, requirements, and guidance. So 3 important elements. Seek to recover secondary materials in a responsible manner, and provides guidance for engaging with individuals involved in subsistence activities. So this seems kind of intuitive. What is the scope of this standard? What we can see in this slide is the scope of processes and activities that were covered in the discussions, that are covered in the requirements, that go from collection through classification and sorting. And then there are two groups of processes that are important to be distinguished. One is the non-destructive processes, and the other group is the destructive processes. And there is a hierarchy also proposed in the standard to go first for the non-destructive processes, because in that way we would still give an opportunity to the recoverable resources to be used to be re-enter into the circular economy with a higher value. This is something I will explain a little bit further in the next slides. We discussed lengthy on the scope, and we also agreed that because this standard is more generic, there will not be quality criteria for specific types of secondary materials recovered. So you don't expect that this is part of the standard. This is generic one. Also, the energy recovery and disposal are activities and processes not covered in this standard. As well, the preparation and processing of products or components for the reuse or reprocessing. Why not this? Because this standard is focusing on the recovery of secondary materials. So these steps for the preparation and processing of products for the reuse or processing are in a step before, or when recoverable resources could be sorted out in a way that they could go to a higher part in the hierarchy and being reused. So this is a simplified way to describe the activities and processes within the scope in the standard. Two important elements to highlight how ambitious this standard is, the intention of this standard, aiming to change mindsets. And you will see, starting with the standard 5904, with the definitions and framework, and then with the other circular economy standards, we agreed to avoid the term waste, because in our mindsets, this has a connotation of something that cannot be used anymore, that doesn't have a value. So we said we will replace this term with recoverable resource. And you will see along the document in the 5914, perhaps only twice we use the term waste in order to of course, still acknowledge the correspondence, because you see many statistics that you cannot delete, and there we will have the term waste for numbers, for figures, for some definitions. But this was one approach that we used. And the other aspect that is also very relevant to highlight is the acknowledgement of these people, individuals, that work under subsistence activities. So earning the minimum to subsist, to survive. And these are the majority in value chains that handle waste management, especially in vulnerable economies, in emerging economies, where about 80%, of course, this will depend on the recoverable resource stream, 80% of these individuals are engaged in subsistence activities. So there needs to be a way to acknowledge and to include, to improve their work styles, their working conditions. So this is the subsistence activity group, and for the first time in ISO documents, in an ISO standard, this was acknowledged. This is the structure of the standard, and especially in the clauses 6, 7, and 8, 3 clauses, you will find there about 80 requirements. What is a requirement in ISO? Expressions that mandate, that if you want to implement a standard, mandate you to do so. And they have the sentence with a shall. You shall consider this, you shall include this shall be developed. And these are the operational requirements, the organizational ones, and the traceability requirements. So it's just a list of topics that are included in this structure, in this standard. Very important are also the 3 annexes that were developed. The Annex A with examples of organizations for the recovery of secondary materials. The Annex B on the methodology for selecting the recovery pathway. I mentioned this before. This is a relevant element to give guidance on what a recovery pathway could look like. And the Annex C is about guidance on how to engage individuals from subsistence activities. Very important, the standard is not saying you have to engage, you shall engage. It says if you are already engaged or you aim to engage, you shall consider this. So this is an open door with guidance on how to do that if you want to do so. On the recovery pathway, also based on an example, the idea is it's a very simplified way, and there I only present the last part of the recovery pathway that is about the secondary materials recovery. The last part is when having sorted the recoverable resources in order to recover secondary materials, the preferred option is to sort them in a way that allows us to recover the materials with the same qualities, with the same physical, chemical properties and function. And this is considered the best option, the preferred option. And if you are used to use the language of hierarchies in the circular economy, then you would say this is the higher hierarchy in this process. If we don't achieve that, that would mean that the materials recovered do not have the same properties and functions, so they are with a lower quality. And this would be the next option. This is about the recovery pathway, and that is required to be presented, to be thought through when implementing the ISO 59014. So with this, I just conclude with the pilots that we are conducting as part of the program that supported the development of this standard. There are 5 pilots in a number of countries, and you will see one is EcoWork that you will see today presenting the progress. The other one is BEM Recycling in Mauritius. EcoWork is in India, BEM Recycling is in Mauritius. It's in a small island in Africa. I didn't even find the dot. I didn't even find the dot where I could put it, but this is somewhere there besides Africa. In the southern part of Africa. Then you have the value chain of a company Fairphone that starts in Ghana and goes to the Netherlands. And the other pilot is in Peru, CICLO, working on recycled granulates for the building sector. Roger will explain about this today. And we have, with this, completed our process and can only thank to the participants that work on the standard. Some of them are present today, have seen the list. And with this, I would like to welcome the first presenter. Thank you. And please, could you show your screen? Peter Salim.
Yes, so
representing BASF. Thank you, Peter, for joining this webinar, and we welcome your reflections, your impressions of the process, but also what the opportunities would be of implementing the standard.
Yes, thank you, Sonia, and for this nice introduction. Welcome also from my side. Peter Saling is my name. I'm working here at BASF chemical industry, but I'm also chairing the subcommittee 5 since some years. And this subcommittee in the joint working group, this standard 59014 was developed. So I hope you can see the slides, or otherwise, can you see the slides? Sonia, can you see them?
No, not yet. We're receiving questions in the chat, so I'm trying to answer in the meantime, or maybe I can, while you show, just mention about the term waste that is not used in the standard. It doesn't mean that it's in conflict with the regulations. It only means that we will use probably two terms. One, the legal term that is waste linking with the regulations, and when implementing the standard in a facility, we use recoverable resource. With this, we mean waste. So it doesn't mean that we are discarding one term or the other. Go ahead, please, Peter.
Yeah, thank you. So I hope you can see now the slides. Yes, that's great. Yeah, so I just want to give some reflection on the relevance of ISO 14914 and outlook of ISO trends. So I will jump over this. I will start with this family of ISO TC207. So Sonia introduced it already, and I just wanted to highlight where we are today and also some outlining activities. You see in my subcommittee, subcommittee 5, which I am the chair of, we are focusing on the most relevant standards for LCA 1440, 1444, but we have also standards on water footprint. Also, Sonia mentioned the ISO 14075, which was published last year. It's principles and framework for social life cycle assessment, so that will be also in the secondary materials level, will be an important element to cover also social impacts there. Then
Sorry,
sure,
Peter,
yeah.
just a quick, we can see your presentation mode, not the full slide.
Okay.
If you can change that.
Yeah, that's perfect now.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. So what's going on in the ISO world? So our neighbor committee, subcommittee 7, works on an update of ISO 14067, which you might know it's a product carbon footprint standard. So there will be new elements also for secondary materials in there. That is closely linked to our activity we have here in my subcommittee. Again, it's ISO 14077. It's principles and framework for chain of custody and LCA. So in that sense, often circular materials plays a role because mass balance, but also book and claim, but also other chain of custody models needs to be addressed and needs to be accurately calculated. And that's, we started last year, this standard. It's still, yeah, it's in the middle of the development or beginning of the development. So that will be an important standard also for secondary materials, because mass balance, be it biomass balance or be it circular materials, will be one of the key elements of the transformation of industry to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, but also to reduce other environmental impacts. And then in addition, we have also standards on monetization in subcommittee 1. So we have guidelines for determining environmental costs and benefits, but also 14008 monetary evaluation of environmental impacts, and also 14051, it's environmental management, material cost flow accounting. So that might be important also for circular or elements of the circular economy. Circular economy has a lot of dimensions, a lot of opportunities, a lot of ideas can be implemented in there. So I just give you an overview on closing the loop and extending the loop. So all these things might be covered also with ISO 159 or 14. So you see different technical elements like pyrolysis and gasification of waste, of packaging waste, for instance, or depolymerization. Mechanical recycling can be an element in there too, looping materials. That can be done also on the bio-based materials, so using bio-based feedstocks, using bio-based building blocks, coming from recycled processes or secondary materials, they can feed in this biological loop. So we have a technical loop and a biological loop. At the end, we want to avoid landfill. We want to reuse the materials. We want to use all the resources in an efficient way to reduce also fossil feedstock uses, which goes hand in hand also with the reduction of carbon dioxide emissions, but also the reduction of other impacts. You have many opportunities there on circular feedstocks. So the idea is to increase the volume of renewable and recycled feedstocks from sustainable sources. That's important, how to find it out. Therefore, you need a matrix, therefore you need an assessment, and therefore you also need ISO standards to harmonize that in industries and in other countries. So at the end, because it's often an international process, at the end you can clearly show where the benefits are if you use the secondary materials. That is on circular feedstocks, but also you can implement new material cycles. So designing materials for circularity, developing solutions with improve or enable recycling, enable higher durability and prolonged lifetime. So there are a lot of opportunities that can be used there. And that can be linked also with new business models, because if you do something technically, you also have to market it, you have to sell it. And in this sense, new markets might be interesting, but also to creating smart solutions and also offer new services, which allow decoupling of growth from resource consumption. So that are some of the key elements here you should consider. New feedstocks, I just give you some ideas on that. For sure, it's not a complete list, but it might give you some ideas how to use feedstocks, but also how to apply the ISO standards on that to show where are the benefits of these materials and do they really making sense. Also supporting decision-making in your companies, but also probably in policy making, and also together with customers and final consumers. That might be helpful that you show what you have done. You have a measurement system, a harmonized one on ISO standards, and then you have results that you can present, showing that your activities making sense, improving sustainability, and also closing many loops and following many requirements of circular economy. So you can talk about recycled feedstocks, probably from mechanically recycled feedstocks. Polystyrene is here an example. So it's used in a lot of variations, and you can have a lot of opportunities to recycle these materials if you can accurately collect the material, and if you accurately then can recycle it, and you can show that with a matrix that you have done something meaningful. Chemically recycling is more from our industry, one thing where we're focusing on, because often the materials are not have not that high quality that you can have mechanical recycling. So we adapted a process after the mechanical recycling. The leftovers out of the mechanical recycling can be treated again, and you can make chemical recycling with that. You can reintroduce this so-called pyrolysis oil that gets out there, and you can feed it back to industrial or in industry sites, and you can make some new compounds out of it. So often they have a virgin material quality, so that's a benefit out of this. So you don't have to change systems, you don't have to change material lists and things like that. So it's an identical product that you can produce out of these recycled wastes. On the other hand, I just talked about mass balance and also biomass balance. It's a more an indirect approach using this chain of custody models to say we cannot just switch one big site from one day to another, from fossil one to bio one. So just use mass balance, biomass balance, but also circular material mass balance to support your development and use these materials in an accurate manner. And then for sure you can have also dedicated bio-based productions that you can use in your sites, and you can use secondary materials, secondary bio-based feedstocks, but also feedstocks derived from different secondary material pools. To sum that up, what we can say is circular economy means decoupling growth from resource consumption. Companies are more and more driving circular economy by making the most of it in the limited resources of our planet. Industry should keep the materials in use for as long as possible, minimizing waste and creating value with renewable resources. ISO standards support companies in achieving their goals of circular economy, and also harmonized assessment approaches enable societies to understand the activities of industries and to support purchasing decisions for a more sustainable future. If you want to do this type of assessments, let's say life cycle assessments, for instance, which is a common goal, which can follow ISO 14040 and 4044, there are today more and more data available, often also freely available in open source databases, or also by associations, but also the EU Commission provides in the near future a set of data which can be used there. So more and more, if people see there's a need for that, also more and more freely available data will be there, supporting your life cycle assessment. But with primary information, you can also create your own data sets, and you can use it in your own life cycle assessments and in your own decision-making processes. So that was a short overview from my side. And so with that,
thank you, Peter. And I see there are some questions that we will resolve. You can kindly, I would like to ask you to kindly answer to them in the chat. At the end, we will have a panel, a discussion where we can resume some of the non-answered questions and additional ones. Is that okay?
Okay, okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. So now we welcome Roger Mori. Roger, you can share your screen. He is the managing director of CICLO, that is a Peruvian company. And we will be listening to the introduction of the company and their experience on implementing the ISO 59014. The floor is yours, Roger. You were already sharing the screen? And yeah.
Yes.
Now it's coming.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, perfect. Go on. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Thank you, Sonia. Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning for me, because I am from Peru. I am Roger Mori. I am the CEO of CICLO, a company that produces eco-materials from the construction and demolition waste recycling. Many thanks to the World Resources Forum for the invitation. And I will give you an overview about our experience in the implementation of the ISO 59014. So from November of last year until January of this year, we had the support of the World Resources Forum for the implementation of the standard in our company, the results of which I will present below. I want to start by telling you who we are. CICLO is a company that was born with the purpose of reducing the environmental impact of companies that generates construction waste and consume construction materials. CICLO was founded in 2015 in Lima, Peru, but started operations in 2020. As you know, construction industry generates a great negative impact in the environment, and for that reason, we created CICLO. And CICLO, we inspired the name of CICLO in the circular economy. Our solution is based on offering two value propositions to the market. Companies pay us to manage their waste. Then we take this waste to our plant and turn it into new eco-materials that we finally sell in the same construction market. So I will summarize my presentation by showing only the three main requirements of the standard. No? The operational requirement, organizational requirement, and the last requirement. To evaluate the operational requirement, organizational and traceability requirements, we use a matrix called the feasibility questionnaire. First, we have the operational requirement, where we obtain a compliance of 54%. The evaluation of this requirement allows us to develop some documents that we did not have, such as an attribute list of the construction and demolition waste that arrives at our plant. The analysis of the collection requirement provides us an opportunity for improvement. So we are looking how to improve our operation in our waste collection system. In general, we we found a lot of opportunity improvements in this implementation. The last one was the organizational requirements. According to this requirement, we obtained a compliance result of 43%. As we can see, we have a higher development in the interested party engagement criteria, since we have definite policies and processes for managing our relationship with our customers, employees, suppliers, and other stakeholders involved in our business and our chain value. On the other hand, we did not obtain a score in the responsibility towards individuals engaged in substance activities requirement, which means another opportunity for improvement for our organization. This indicator will help us to implement social support programs for people involved in our value chain, such as recyclers. The traceability requirement is a total improvement opportunity. This was the importance of this implementation. Our organization has not yet implemented processes to ensure the traceability of waste that due to several reasons. Firstly, we need to work in coordination with stakeholders, something that could only happen with law and regulation enforceable by the state. On the other hand, compared to other types of waste, it is very difficult to keep an exact traceability on construction waste. Technology and innovation are needed to ensure that traceability provides reliable data. However, the information provided in the standard will allow us to implement basic measures to start developing processes to track the traceability of managed waste. Well, in this slide, we could see our material flow analysis. The implementation of the standard has allowed us to evaluate our materials management and recovery system in a logical and detailed manner. As a result, we have achieved many improvements in our processes and policies, developing new flows and documents to measure our results more efficiently. For example, we now have a material flow analysis where we measure and quantify all inputs and outputs of energy and materials in our management and recycling process. Another important document we have developed in our implementation of the standard is the list of attributes for recycled aggregates, because recycled aggregates is the product that we finally have in the recycling process of construction and demolition waste. And the other important document for us was the classification document that is very important to strengthen the participation. This document is very important to manage the construction and demolition waste that finally is in our plant. I want to finish this general overview, talk about the code of ethics for the value chain that we was implementing in this implementation of the standard. This document is very important to strengthen the participation of recyclers in our value chain, which will allow us to have a greater efficiency in our material recovery process and greater social impact on the community. Because we are working now with Recycling Association for the improvement of the secondary recovery materials. So that's all. Many thank you for your attention. This is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roger. And you will see that there are some questions that will start emerging in the chat. Please, you can answer them. We have additional ones at the end with all panelists together. Very interesting, your experience. Thanks. Now we welcome Andrea Wehrli. She represents EcoWork and Voluzio, and she will walk us through the case of EcoWork in India. Thank you, Dea. Welcome.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you very much for the invitation. Hello, everyone. I'm Dea Wehrli. I'm from Switzerland, but I'm here to represent EcoWork, which is an e-waste facility in India. So we are based in Delhi, close to Delhi, and we have a facility of the size of approximately 20,000 square feet. And we are an officially registered, authorized e-waste recycler in India. What we do is we collect and recycle electronic waste up to the level of we dismantle it. Sometimes we aim to also to have a shredder, but mostly it's really just dismantling and then forward it to formal registered downstream players. We are EPR, extended producer responsible compliance, and our goal or vision why we started this in the beginning was very much on finding a way how we can include and build a bridge between formal and informal players. So we want to close circular value chains, material change, and promote environmental sustainabilities. We have a focus on products such as IT equipment like computers, laptops, printers, etc., but also include industrial equipment and we provide our consumer appliances also with machines, televisions, dishwashers, etc. And we use simple tools, dismantling tools. We have working tables, proper ventilation in place, etc. I show you now some pictures of the facility so you have an understanding of how it looks there. So on the top left, you see the building, and then in the middle, the registration area, and then some small workshops in case, let's say you're an informal micro entrepreneur and you want to dismantle your e-waste, you can also come to our facility and you can just rent a space. So we also have this kind of inclusion opportunity to work with informal micro entrepreneurs to really be that bridge building entity. What we do also with the informal sector specifically is to provide a capacity and educational awareness training sessions, workshops, not only on technical aspects about hazardous substances that you can find in e-waste, but also on more administrative things as well, be that with compliance, EPR, requirements, etc. So trying to support them wherever there is a need that we can see where it's also valuable for the business and for their understanding. This is not always very easy to be very honest with you, because as you can see on the left, that was one of the first times we had someone working from the informal sector in our facilities, and you can see it's quite a mess. That's how they are used to work, and it takes a lot of effort to have that in a more structured and organized way. And I like that picture to showcase how we can become from doing things, but then also kind of making that more organized and structured. And I think ISO comes in here and helps us also from an organization ourselves to understand how we do things and also structure it in a more professional way. So for you to understand, we have the facility, and this is now trying to align with the ISO requirements when we went through that implementation of the ISO standard. So at the facility, we have criteria which we say like what kind of materials we recover. For example, it has to have a certain economic value. There needs to be a market and demand. we need to be able to treat it safely as well, and be able to procure it in a legally compliant way. Also, there should not be child labor involved. And based on these criteria, there are the stocks of recoverable resources. We do also the collection. So we collect it, and at the point of entry into the facility, we collect a range of data. You can see here the list, for example, the invoice date, sometimes the vehicle number, if that's feasible, name and address of the supplier. We have a unique number that we give each incoming batch. We then also apply a HS code and an item code on what kind of material and type of electronic waste it is, and so on. Then there's a first classification and sorting taking place that is based basically on attributes such as can the item be sold as such for reuse? Is it maybe an item that arrived but actually we don't accept it? Or is it going for material recovery? And then sometimes you have incoming waste stream that is completely mixed. Sometimes you have only specific e-waste products. And then according to that, there's initial sorting taking place. Then following that, whatever is good for reuse, we don't have a systematically approach that in place yet, but it's basically on optical tests, looking at it, understanding it, whether it could be there's a potential for use. And then this is sold further for either a preparation to other organizations that focusing on reuse or direct reuse. A large part of the material is, however, going to the dismantling, and that's our main focus of activities. And here again, before we start doing the dismantling activities, because sometimes the materials is also stored at the facility for a while. And before we go and do the dismantling, there's the weight of the material going to be dismantled is collected. Also, the people who are working on it is collected, and the unique reference numbers that we applied to it is also registered. And then this is like dismantled, and you have different materials. And that again is then classified and sorted according to different attributes, such as what type of material do you have? Is it copper, iron, plastics? Sometimes the color of the plastics, the value, the different grades, etc. And after the dismantling, all these informations are also registered. How much do we have from copper? How much iron have we received from that dismantling activities? And this is done on a daily basis. So then you have a lot of different fractions, and these are then going either to material recovery or to a hazardous treatment or preparation for use, depending on the types of fractions. So this is just to give you an overview of the material flow also in the facility, and kind of nailing it down now for the ISO pilot really helped us in understanding the flow, and also where exactly do we collect which data, where do we have missing gaps of collecting data and ensuring traceability. I forgot this one. The last step is, of course, when the material leaves the facility, we do register also where it goes, the name and contacts. Again, here you get another, for every fraction, there is a specific code then to ensure that traceability. So overall, by applying the ISO 59014, we have a lot of benefits in really showcasing also our customers that we are a hassle-free and fully compliant process, that we are compliant with ISO, or that's the idea in the future, at least showcase how far we are in compliance with ISO, that we are working and really put a lot of efforts into having a traceable value chain, and creating information, creating data that can be used also to then work and improve the overall material cycles. It also helps in ESG reporting and understands also the engagement that we have, or this focus on the micro entrepreneurs that is really unique, and that enables us to highlight also this social focus that we aim to create and the impact that we are aiming for. Of course, there are a lot of challenges also in regards to ISO. For example, applying all the standards and following these requirements, it's usually a lot of like resource and time intensive. And in a competitive market setup, time is also money, and it's always very competitive. So you always have to prioritize, and this is also challenging, especially for a small and young startup as EcoWork is. And when we talk about the traceability and the value chain, it's sometimes difficult to get the partners also aligned and to have them ready to apply, or let's say, for example, code of conduct, to be able to, or ready to sign such a code of conduct. And here, for us, that's where we see a bit the limitations, but also a very interesting approach on how can we improve there and enhance the overall system. So overall, it's a lot of benefits for our own understanding, but also for our market position. And with that, I want to thank you again for giving us this opportunity to test the ISO standard and for being able to present the results here. Thanks.
Thank you very much to all presenters. Maybe we can now go through some questions. We will not be able to read them all, but some questions were raised on the presentations. And then I have a couple of questions as well. Maybe let's start with a question related to alignment with the EPD. Maybe this is for Peter, because there were a couple related to that. How would that alignment be respected? Perhaps when, in which form? I think this makes sense. The question is valuable because there is a growing demand for environmental product declarations. And yeah, and also to know that the 59014 is not just about the environment, it's covering the social aspects as well. So maybe there you can briefly, please, Peter, elaborate, because there are many questions. Thank you.
Yeah, so I would say if you talk about EN 15804, which is a EPD standard for building construction, the easiest way would be that EN 15804 will be revised and consider all the developments that have been done since the last revision. And then that would be easiest way to introduce these new elements of standards in there. But it's more or less that the EPD standards need to start to have the revision. And that's often seen if you see around you things are changing, then you really should initiate a revision. And that's what I would clearly recommend in this sense. And that's a European standard, but for sure it's the same also for other EPD standards in other regions.
Thank you, Peter. I have a question for Dea on India, and then I will mention two questions, another one for Roger, and then you please answer one after the other. So Dea, it's about what is collected by EcoWork. Do these recoverable resources come from other parts from India, or are they only concentrated in the northern part of this country? So how open is it? This is one question to you, Dea, and Roger. I know it's about the business model, but still it has been asked, what about the relationship between costs of a recycled ton of waste, of construction and demolition waste? Perhaps you can mention this in dollars, if you can do an estimate. Thank you. So Dea, please, first.
Okay, thank you, Sonia, for the question. So we are located in Ghaziabad, which is a city just next to Delhi, and it's known to be kind of the e-waste hub of India. So there's a lot of e-waste that comes from all over the country and is being transported to Ghaziabad. Now, we have basically three different types of sources that we target. One is directly corporates, where we try to engage And this is now focusing mostly on the northern side, where logistics are not, it's not too much of transport and logistics that we need to think of, but we are also open to explore other options, but it's still something that we develop. Then there's kind of an auctions and bidding process where you can access e-waste. And this is done on various locations, mostly in northern parts, some also around Calcutta area that we have procured. And then we focus or work together with the informal micro entrepreneurs, which aggregate themselves from all over India, but of course you also find a lot in Delhi itself. So depends on with whom you work, etc. The value chain comes basically from all over India, but the focus is on the northern parts.
Thank you. Roger?
Yes, would you repeat the question, please?
Ya, el costo de una tonelada, de producir una tonelada en dólares.
Okay, okay.
Only if you can say it, because I know it's a business model question. Solamente muy confidencial.
It depends. It depends of several factors. For example, the recycled aggregates in Peru, in Lima, Peru, have a price around $20, and maybe the cost to produce these recycled aggregates is around $5 or $10 maybe.
Thanks. Very, very clear. And thank you for your openness. There is another question for you, Roger, then for Dea, and then for Peter. Roger, another question is about whether you consider also producing reused, also considering selling reused materials that were used, o sea, reusar aquello que recibes. This is not a higher quality or better option in the circular economy. Think of that. The other question relates to the employment laws, worker insurance, liability, on health and safety aspects when integrating these individuals that work at EcoWork. I mean, how you face that. And maybe Peter, the question is on data, LCA data. What sources of LCA data would you recommend for facilities that want to start with this implementation? Please, Roger, you start.
Yeah, so there are open LCA available where you can have some secondary data, generic data. I just mentioned the EU database, which is available very soon, but also more and more associations promoting and publishing data on processes. Also, some authorities have databases, like in Germany, you have the UBA database, which is a bigger one. So I would say there are in different regions, different opportunities to get secondary data at least. But for sure, the best thing is to prepare your own data based on primary data. And I would recommend, if you have really significant steps that you want to consider, that you really use primary data for that. There are for sure also economic applicable data, so you can buy databases, depends on purchasing conditions. So like CIMAPRO or EcoInvent, or probably also Gabi, you might see there are opportunities to buy also data sets.
Thank you, Peter. Very interesting, very good options. Roger, could you?
Yes. Yes, we only use secondary materials or waste to produce our eco-materials. No? Our main activity is the recycling of construction and demolition waste. We have been to use a lot of innovation to use this kind of materials, because to produce recycled aggregates in compared to produce natural aggregates is very different, because the final products need to have high qualities for the competition to the conventional materials. No, and we only use waste to produce our eco-materials.
Thank you, Roger. Clear. Maybe you can indicate in the chat the web link of your company so that people start also navigating there. Thank you. Dea, please.
Yes, thanks, Sonia. Thanks, Aisha, for the question. There are basically two types of engagement with the informal sector, or not just two types, but that require a contract. One is if we employ informal micro-entrepreneurs as workers in EcoWork, and then they get an employment contract. And the other is if informal micro-entrepreneurs, they come and rent a workshop. And in that case, it's a rental contract with a client. So, and that's how basically we navigate around any, we have to comply with worker laws and regulations in that way.
Very good, thank you. I think, yes, we have a question now. It's related perhaps to all, and it comes from Pakistan. And it's in general saying, there are no opportunities for waste recycling, secondary materials, recovery from waste in Pakistan. There are no opportunities, how to step forward, what to do. Maybe I can start with an answer and you can complement if that is allowed, because it's related to the standard. Well, it depends on where in the value chain you can have an impact. I would like to know if you are an investor, a company, you are a citizen, you are a citizen's activity, it depends. Because in the value chain, you have several possibilities, from collection, for example, through classification, then dismantling, then then the treatment, the destructive treatment. I guess you are not talking about the destructive processing, so you're not a company, I assume. Then collection is a very good point, a very good starting point, and there you can have systems for collection. It depends on the framework in the country. There could be private systems for collection. There could be legally established systems for collection according to the law. You call them PRO, for example. It depends. So we would need to look into the country enabling conditions and see what is feasible. But for sure, there are many experiences of communities that organize themselves and improve the collection in quality and quantity terms. Quality meaning the best possible without mixing, for example, hazardous with non-hazardous, etc. And in quantity, of course, by doing so, you increase the amounts of recoverable resources. Maybe with this, if there is something to add. Or Roger, another question. With a good sorting, could you think about reuse? Well, he already explained, I think, about this. About the traceability. And we have only 1 minute, that's why I'm jumping quickly, sorry for that. There are many questions, interesting ones. So the QR code for traceability, maybe Dea, you could elaborate there because we discussed about traceability, right? And how to maintain identification, for example, via QR code on the actual many parts in first products for secondary use. We know it's not covering the standard. Maybe you can elaborate on why.
Sorry, I didn't quite got the question. With QR codes?
Yeah, I mean, the person that asked Tove at Yuba assumes that in the traceability requirements part, we provide the tools on how to track the data. This is not something we covered.
No, it's more on the requirement. The ISO standard shows more what kind of data is required to be collected and to be ensured that there is data around for this traceability. But the ISO doesn't give you the tools how to do so. However, there exist various also startups and companies, organizations that focusing on that. So we, for example, are doing some pilot testing with Minimize, a company that helps us with software systems to how can we integrate the data there to make this at the end also very simple for implementation, because otherwise you have a lot of Excel files here and there, but you actually need to also connect the different information and data together. And for that, there are software solutions available.
Thank you so much. I think with this, we try to cover the almost, key questions, 80% of them, I would say, in some way or the other. And we will go through the chat. I can commit to go through the unanswered questions and answer to them after this webinar. And because we are on time, I would like to express our thanks to the panelists. This was an excellent composition representing different countries, different sectors, different issues, different benefits as well. And I learned a lot. I hope the audience as well. And you can also, please, the panelists, take note of some of the questions for you to take home, but also some expressions of interest on your work. That is very nice. And we hope with this, we motivated for more implementation of the ISO 59014. The world needs more working together, right? Thank you again, and have a nice afternoon, evening, morning.
Thank you all. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your questions.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you, everybody.
Thank you.